Hello, friends. This is Anthony from Forest Ghost Conversations. Are you looking to get into the podcast game yourself? Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, let me tell you, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has some tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Then, when hosting on Anchor, you can even distribute your podcast on listening platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more places. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And get this, everyone, best of all, Anchor is totally free. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to discuss the 7th episode from the Book of Boba Fett titled In the Name of Honor with our guest, Dan Zare from Coffee with Kenobi. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to connecting with you on those platforms. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. All right, everyone, welcome back. And it's time to get into that segment that I affectionately call Cloud City Gossip. And this is our rundown of the Star Wars news for this past week. And we'll do that before we get into the conversation between Dan and myself for Episode 7, the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett. So first, we finally have a release date, ladies and gentlemen, for the start of the Kenobi series. Obi-Wan Kenobi will officially debut on Disney Plus on May 25th. That date also marks the 45th anniversary of the release of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. I hope that you will join me in counting down the days because I cannot wait for this show. The first teaser poster was also released featuring Ewan McGregor in the Kenobi garb, traversing the sands of Tatooine. Next, some of the new installments in the High Republic saga were announced this past week. The books include The Art of Star Wars: The High Republic by Kristen Baver, Path of Deceit by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland, a young adult novel, Quest for the Hidden City by George Mann, a middle grade novel, Convergence by Zoraida Cordova, an adult novel, and Quest of the Jedi, a Dark Horse comic series written by Claudia Gray. We will keep an eye out for when these titles will be released, and I hope that you will look into taking a deep dive into the High Republic stories yourself. You still have time to catch up before the first wave of this new books are released around next October. Also, do you love the Rogue One soundtrack? I certainly do. And if you do, then I hope you also take some time to listen to the new expanded version of the soundtrack that Disney just released, featuring the amazing work done by Michael Giacchino. Be sure to give these songs a listen on your streaming site of choice this week. In addition to that wonderful music news there, the maestro himself, John Williams, turned 90 this week, and celebrations took place all over social media in honor of the fabulous composer. His work spans over 50 years now, with epic scores for films like Jaws, Jurassic Park, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all of the Indiana Jones films, the early entries in the Harry Potter saga, E.T., and of course, Star Wars, just to name a few. In addition, The Hollywood Reporter is reporting that actor Ray Stevenson has been cast in the upcoming Ahsoka series for Disney+. Their article notes that Stevenson will play a villainous admiral, but not Grand Admiral Thrawn. Please keep in mind, though, that Lucasfilm has yet to confirm this casting, so please take this news with a healthy grain of salt. And finally, the Book of Boba Fett has concluded its run of new episodes. You can check out the entire first season now on Disney+. So make sure you watch this excellent Star Wars content and then go back and listen to all the episodes for Force Ghost Conversations over the past 7 or 8 weeks or so, and get all caught up to speed with all the thoughts and ideas and themes and questions, all of that. We discuss it all on Force Ghost Conversations. So with that, we're now onto our main topic for today, the discussion of the Book of Boba Fett's seventh episode. So, my conversation with Dan Zare will be on the other side of this break. Stay tuned, everyone. All right, everyone, welcome back to Forest Ghost Conversations. And as alluded to in the preamble, this episode will be a discussion about episode 7 of the Book of Boba Fett titled In the Name of Honor. But first, we have a guest today. I am so proud to welcome to Forest Ghost Conversations none other than Dan Zare. Dan is the host and brand director of the magnificent podcast Coffee with Kenobi, and he is also the co-author of the Star Wars book and Star Wars Character Encyclopedia Updated and Expanded Edition. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Anthony, thank you so much, my brother. This is a real treat for me to be on here. I just really like what you've done in a short amount of time. You've just grown so much, and I love your show, and I just really like the way you talk Star Wars, and so I'm really appreciate you having me on.
The honor is all mine. You and I have talked before. Coffee with Kenobi is such an inspiration to me, and it still is a driving force for everything that we do here. So I like to think of myself as almost your Padawan in many regards. So this is really just a wonderful, wonderful occasion here. So I'm thrilled that you're here to talk Star Wars and the Book of Boba Fett. But before we get into that, there may be some in our audience that have never heard of Coffee with Kenobi for whatever reason. They may not have heard of you and the wonderful stuff that you've done in the Star Wars community to this point. So I just want to ask some preliminary questions about your Star Wars background just to get everyone up to speed here.
Certainly, and then at the end of this, I think we should cut off your braid. I think you're a Jedi Knight. I think you're a podcasting Jedi Knight.
Oh, I appreciate that. I was
Yeah.
thinking I have a Soda over here, and I was like, is there a spinoff show, Soda with Skywalker down the line coming?
They might be.
It might have to. Great. So let's dive in here to my first question. And
Sure.
to start, let's go back to the beginning. What is your first Star Wars memory?
My first Star Wars memory is, well, gosh, I think the first Star Wars memory I have is buying the C-3PO action figure, because I got the figure before I ever saw the movie, because every time we tried to see it, it was sold out. And that was continually frustrating for me. We really wanted to see it. I wasn't allowed to see PG movies, but my cousin had told my mom that it was okay, that it was safe, and there was no blood. She must have forgotten about the cantina part with Ponto Baba, but that's okay. And then so
Just
we
for a
got
split
the
second.
figure just for a split second. That's right. And I saw it at a drive-in movie theater in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I just was hooked right away. And it didn't come out in drive-in movie theaters till the summer of 1978. So that was the first time I saw it, and obviously it's had a substantial impact on me and my life,
I
like
love
so
it.
many of us.
Absolutely. I love that you got to see it in a drive-in. What an experience.
Oh, under the lights, man, under the stars, the real stars, while I'm watching Star Wars, and it was everything. It was absolutely everything.
Wow. And I'm with the pandemic over the last couple of years, drive-ins have had a resurgence too, and I know a lot of people have gotten to actually see some Star Wars films in the drive-in medium over the last couple of years now. So that's really cool that it's come full circle in a way.
Isn't that neat? And then I saw The Empire Strikes Back during the pandemic at a drive-in. That was the first time Mason had ever seen it in a theater. So we joked that, like, okay, the first time I saw Star Wars was at a drive-in. First time you saw a Star Wars movie at a drive-in, it was Empire. Maybe your son will see The Return of the Jedi in a drive-in. Wouldn't that be cool?
Absolutely. It has to be so at this point. Got
This
to
is
keep the
the
lineage
way,
going.
right?
This is the
Yeah.
way, exactly. And then the next one, Phantom Menace in a drive-in, so on and so
Oh, I
forth.
love
It'll
it.
just be a
I love it.
generational thing.
Your
Awesome.
great-great-great-great-grandfather liked to babble about Star Wars on a podcast. So yeah, that's what they'll say.
They'll be able to go back and listen to it all. It'll be a great historical document for them.
That's right.
So, as you know, Star Wars has become so expansive since 1977, branching off into spin-off movies, animated shows, live-action TV, books, etc. Is there an aspect of the Star Wars galaxy that you would define as your Star Wars?
I mean, the original trilogy is my Star Wars, without a question, because that's what brought me into it. That's what got me into the figures and the toys and the collectibles and the books. But through the modern era of Star Wars, my Star Wars is Star Wars Rebels. I absolutely love Star Wars Rebels. I would put it up there with and above some of of the feature films themselves. It tells a complete story. It's got captivating characters. It's got great surprises and the full gamut of emotions, some powerful themes, some great additions to the lore and the mythology. And I just think it's the best. It's going to be hard to ever top Star Wars Rebels, and they don't necessarily have to, but I definitely treasure my memories and moments with that. The cast was great. That was kind of when Coffee with Kenobi was really finding its footing. We had a majority of the cast on. Freddie Prinze Jr. was on, I think, 4 or 5 times. I got to interview him live at Celebration Anaheim back in 2015. There's a lot of special memories wrapped up in that one for me.
That is awesome. I love that answer. And Star Wars Rebels is truly the gift that keeps on giving.
Mhm.
My brother-in-law is making his way through the entire Star Wars canon currently. So he started with the Phantom Menace and he's going chronologically through it all. And over the holiday break, we were with him when he was going through the first 2 seasons of Rebels, and just to see it through his eyes, not knowing any of these characters, was phenomenal. Then when he got to the end of Rebels, and of course we know what happens to some of the characters, he texted me and he was like, I'm in tears, and
Oh, yeah.
it's just so impactful and powerful that this story has had and how it's resonating with people. And I know
Absolutely.
Rebels Remember Day is coming up in March, and I hope listeners at
Mhm.
home will participate in that and give some episodes a watch here on Disney Plus to continue celebrating that wonderful story.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. It's great. 4 seasons of magic.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you alluded to this a little bit here. So my last question before we get into the Book of Boba Fett is: Star Wars toys, action figures, and merchandise go hand in hand. What is
Mhm.
your most treasured piece of Star Wars merch?
Oh, boy. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that have a lot of value for me. I've gone through a purge over the last couple of years. I think I've gone through my entire collection 3 different times. I've gotten rid of a lot. I've sold a lot of things, because I just started to realize, like, in my studio, if I can't display it and enjoy it, why do I have it sitting in an attic for 20 years? Like, I would go through my
Hmm.
stuff and I would find things and I would think, I didn't know that I had this. I don't even remember buying this. To me, that was really kind of a wake up call. And I thought, if I'm to that place, I even had some figures I didn't know that I bought already, and I had them twice. That's too much. I'm living on in a means of lack, and I'm doing too much excess. So I've pared down so much. I mean, my Kenner figures are very valuable to me because that's where it started. But you can see some of them. But my Burger King glasses are very special to me
Ooh.
because every year a Star Wars movie came out for the original trilogy, that was part of the giveaway.
Yeah.
It was such a big deal. We'd go and they would actually fill your drink with the glass with your drink, and they would put like a lid on it, a plastic lid, and you were supposed to drink out of your Star Wars glass, and then blah blah blah. So I love those. So I guess I would probably say my Burger King glasses. I've got a lot of crew stuff. I've got an Episode 9 jacket. I've got a lot of really cool stuff, but those glasses to me have a lot of memories.
Oh, awesome. I have fond memories of my uncle telling me about the hunt for those Burger King glasses back in the day
Oh,
too.
so good. And
And
the
he
art on them is tremendous.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I've seen a few pop up on eBay here and there, and like, maybe one day."
Mhm.
Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your backstory here, Dan, and a little bit
Of
about
course.
your fandom in Star Wars currently. But now let's dive into the season finale of the Book of
Let's do
Boba
it.
Fett. So, spoiler warning for anybody at home: if you have not watched the episode yet, this is your chance to stop this episode, pause it, go watch on Disney Plus, and then come back right now. You've been forewarned. So, Dan, I've done my best to put together some questions that are going to be a little thought provoking. I think I wanted to dive
Good.
deep into to this story. I wanted to engage with the mythology with you here. Basically, I wanted to do my best as a student here to put together a worthy test for it that a teacher would be proud of.
I have
uh,
nothing but faith in you, my friend.
Absolutely. Let's hope so. So the title of this episode is "In the Name of Honor," and I found it to be the most poetic title of the series, where the others were much more straightforward. How did you interpret this title when you first saw it, and then at the end of the episode, what did you think of it?
Sure, I've been thinking about this title a lot. And I've been thinking, is it apt for the episode? Did we properly see an example of decisions and choices being made because of honor? I think the biggest, clearest, cleanest example of that is when the Mandalorian and Boba Fett are having that conversation about 20 minutes into the episode, where the Boba Fett says something along the lines of, "You really believe in that Bantha Poodoo, don't you?" And he says, "Yes." And Boba Fett pauses and he says, "Good." And then they have their, the fighting and the Rancors and the this and that. And there's the big showdown between Cad Bane and Boba Fett. And I think he defeats Cad Bane. Well, he asked where he's going to die, but I think using the
Yeah.
gaffy stick is certainly poetic. And maybe it's honorable to the degree that he avenged his Tuscan brethren.
Hmm.
But mostly I see it as a conversation. I really think the biggest challenge for this whole series was that as much as I like Boba Fett, he's not the Mandalorian. He's not Din Djarin. He's not near as compelling or captivating or dynamic as him. Most of the honor comes from the Mandalorian. Boba Fett has that, certainly, but if you're being honest and looking at the scales, I think it's more about the Mandalorian himself. But overall, they honor one another because the respect for that armor for the Beskar and the way they fight together is pretty magnificent too. What do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's this whole idea of this theme of the title leans into that conversation just before they're about to walk out into that blaze of glory that they were planning to go out in. It's exactly right that Boba has a complicated history with his Mandalorian heritage,
Mm,
and the fact that even Din, after he's told he's no longer a Mandalorian by the armorer, still believes in the way. He's
mm,
still going to do his best to follow the path, even though he knows that he's been told otherwise. He may not believe it fully himself that he's still a Mandalorian. Who knows? I don't know what his head is, where his
right.
head is at right now. But that conversation of mutual respect, that honor that they have between each other, it's really captivating to think about. And the fact that they both are inspiring to each other in a certain lens, in that regard, I think for Boba Fett, his honor was mostly in the Mandalorian season 2 when he helped Din
Mhm.
go get Grogu again, after he gave him
Yeah,
his armor. Like that act of service to Din in a way paid off later.
true,
So that it
true.
was that's why he did pro bono work for him. And I
Yes.
think that partially is it'll come down later where I have a question about the overall theme for the series, so we'll get into this a bit more later. But that whole conversation there, where they both know that this might be the end for them, and there's this mutual respect between warriors and this honor code between them, and how they want to go out together as brothers,
Agreed.
is
Agreed.
powerful.
I love that too. And I'm glad it didn't happen.
Me too. Me too. Beskar is a powerful ally.
Yes, it is. As is the notion of selling action figures.
Exactly. Exactly. Knee rockets help too.
Oh man.
Whew,
How
what a
cool
sight.
that he shoots one direction and his knee rocket goes the other direction. That was a pretty fun little piece of
What an
fight
amazing bit of
choreography.
action. What amazing
Yeah, that
bit
was
here.
cool.
So now that we've had a few days to sit with the episode, how do you feel about it overall? And do you think it is a worthy conclusion to the book of Boba Fett?
I think it's an appropriate conclusion for what we had and what we did. There wasn't a gigantic story arc here. I think, and I've said this on Coffee with Kenobi, when the most compelling episodes don't even feature the main character, then you've
Yeah.
got a clear indicator of what the series is about. The series is about continuing the lore, expanding the galaxy, and bolstering the Star Wars brand on Disney Plus because you've got a shared universe. And thank goodness,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have no quibbles with this series. I enjoyed it. I took it for what it was. I didn't expect a lot, just because Boba Fett isn't my favorite character. That's the only
Hmm.
reason. And it made me smile. It made me very happy. Every Wednesday morning for 7 weeks, my son Mason and I had the best time watching it, getting up early, the excitement, the anticipation. We were never disappointed. We were never let down. We always had lots to talk about. We always had lots of laughs, lots of cheering, lots of oohs and ahs. So it served its purpose. It was very entertaining. But I think it was reasonable. I think it was a reasonable finish, and I think it's a springboard to future stories, and I like when
Yeah,
Star Wars does that.
absolutely. And if I can make a little quick joke here, it's almost like he had breakfast with Boba for a couple of Wednesdays there.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly. What
love
do you
it.
think of it?
I am very satisfied with how this episode brought everything to a conclusion, and I I just didn't feel like there were a lot of loose ends here. I felt like we got
Mhm,
answers to every cliffhanger in some way, shape, or form. I felt like the action was awesome to just put it out there. You're right. In
mhm.
a climactic episode like this, you want to have all the stunts pulled. You want them to have all the budget thrown into this last episode, explosions left and right. Right. You don't want
Yep,
to feel like there was a lack of action at all, and there was certainly a ton of
plenty.
that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there was I felt, and I'm going to talk about this a bit later. Uh, there was a lot of additions to the mythology. And something that I liked about this episode was that there was a bit of a greatest hits element to this from the entire series.
True.
You got every character that was introduced, just about, uh, throughout the course of the series had some way, shape, or form in a role in this episode. The Major Domo had his moment in the sun. Pelimoto had her moment in the sun. The Rancor comes back and has a moment, right? Great moments.
Mhm.
Grogu's back. Uh, the mod team is there. We get to see a little bit of Cobb Vanth at the end. The Freetown people are just tremendous. So the fact that all of these characters were able to be added into the soup that is Star Wars and into the
Right.
mix in this episode was very thrilling to me. And I didn't have any questions as to where people are or why they didn't get involved or what's going on here. I'm happy with it.
Good. No, we definitely loved it. We watched it twice the opening day, just because there was a lot to talk about and things to sort of write about and think about. And yeah, I mean, it got people talking. I love that every time it came out, my students and I had the best conversations about it. They're always excited to talk about it with me, and I was excited to hear their perspective, their point of view. Whenever you have a story or a series that gets people talking, it's magic. I mean, WandaVision was like that. WandaVision
Yeah,
is, besides The Mandalorian, WandaVision is probably the best thing that's ever been on Disney Plus. So
agreed.
anytime you can get that kind of idea, right, and that kind of creativity that gets people buzzing, it's pretty great.
It's that water cooler talk that we used to
That's right.
thrive on back in the day, and I'm glad that
Exactly.
all your students are engaging with it too. That people are still finding interesting things about the Star Wars galaxy, even
Mhm.
if they're a fan that just caught it because they have a Disney Plus subscription and they're like, "What's new this week?" and they put it on, or they heard about this character named Boba Fett at some point in their lifetime, or he just looks similar enough to the Mandalorian that they're like, "Maybe it's him. Let's put it on." Uh,
Right. Isn't that ironic too? Because the Mandalorian got his initial, you know, enthusiasm because he looked like Boba Fett, and now he's
yeah,
more popular than Boba Fett,
Yeah,
I
it's
think.
crazy. I love how just in those initial episodes, especially in the gallery, where Dave Filoni is joking that they got the Boba Fett action figure and the Ugnaught and the IG-88 figure, and they're just having their fun in the sandbox as
That's exactly
creators.
right. Yeah, I was
Uh,
thinking about that too, and how we've got a Wookiee to throw into the mix.
Absolutely, Chrysanthemum, my boy, he's
Love
rocking
him.
it. So we've talked about a little bit about the action sequences and how
Mhm.
tremendous they are, and the episode is just absolutely filled with them. And we
Mhm.
could literally talk for hours just breaking apart each and every moment of action in this episode. But were there any scenes in particular that stood out to you?
The one scene that stands out to me the most is when Grogu and the Mandalorian reunited.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cried. I actually cried. I got choked up. I mean, I wasn't bawling, but I got tears running down my face because it was just so enchanting, and I love that this is after over 40 years, we finally have a healthy example of a father-son dynamic, a father
Yeah.
and son relationship, and the authenticity and the pathos of that moment of Grogu leaping into the Mandalorian's arms, and him being completely taken aback, where he's not smooth anymore with his motions. He actually does kind of a jerk, and he takes a second look because he can't believe Grogu was right there in front of him. It was so enchanting. I mean, the emotion in that moment was as good as it gets in Star
Hmm.
Wars. And I to me, that's the big one. There's that, and to a lesser degree, but still very powerful, but visually more dynamic, was when the Rancor is right in front of Grogu, when we see Grogu's back looking up at this beast, and there's such a juxtaposition of the two, and it's a gorgeous tapestry of Star Wars imagery right there. That's very meaningful and great
Absolutely.
to look at.
And I just love how he gets a little tired after connecting with the Rancor, and he just takes a little nap right beside him.
And nuzzles him. Yeah, but it takes him a little bit longer than it used to. You can tell he's gained in his abilities and his endurance.
Yes, yes, definitely. My wife even know that too. He's like, "Oh, he's not as tired as he used to be," and I said, "Astute
That's right.
observation. Great job there."
Pretty cool. Yes.
I think that just I was astounded. I When Boba left the scene originally, he's like, "Hold on here, just hold him off for a bit. Let the Freetown people get away a bit." And he flies off. I was like, "Where's he going? He's probably going to go get the fire spray gunship." That was my initial reaction. I didn't even think that the Rancor was a part of the equation here. And then when I heard that sound, wow!
Yeah.
Basically jumped out of my seat, and just to see a Rancor fully unleashed on the town. Wow, just incredible. The the great work that team did to do whatever CG work or puppetry, whatever they did to put that creature together. Amazing work, and
Completely
just those.
magnificent.
There's this one sequence where the Rancor picked up one of the pikes, and instead of like he eats one later on, but he just lifts it up to Boba on his back, who shoots him and then tosses him, and you hear the Wilhelm
Yes.
scream. I thought that was a great little action sequence there.
It was pretty vicious. Yeah, it was pretty great.
We also hinted a little bit there the two Mandalorians, Boba and Din, just going off in the blaze of glory against the Pike, saying this could be the end of us, and just pulling out every weapon in their arsenal. That was a great moment. And something that I really appreciated too was the fist pumping moment of the Freetown people coming into the fight.
Mhm.
That was amazing for me, not just for the action sequence alone, but what it meant. And to me, that meant self determination for this community. They're
Mhm.
tired of these drug runners telling them what to do, these crime lords ruling their city, and them being in the wake of all this destruction, death, terror, you name it. They're tired just as much as Boba being under these inept leaders. And this is
Yes.
their stand against tyranny, oppression, and
Yeah.
fighting alongside a leader that they respect and that they believe in and that they think is going to lead them to a different path than what they've had set before them. So that was a big standout moment for me.
It was nice because you've got the notion of people from different backgrounds working together to for a common good, to achieve a common goal, which goes all the way back to A New Hope, doesn't it? And beyond, and even before that, in a history of stories and storytelling, and the idea of, finding you have more in common with the people you occupy space with than you don't. And I thought it was very cool. It was very cool.
Absolutely. And then to even go back further in the series, that's the lesson that Boba basically learned from his time with the Tuscans.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's all poetic. It rhymes.
It does.
um, so you talked about your reaction to the reunion between Grogu and Din Djarin,
Mhm.
but based off of that interaction, we know that Grogu clearly made a choice that was laid before him by Luke Skywalker at the end of Episode 6 as the
Mhm.
cliffhanger. What did you think about his choice there to rejoin the Mandalorian?
I think it's a tricky one because if even though Grogu is 50, he's a toddler, but he's a
Hmm.
toddler that is very strong in the Force and can levitate things with his mind and put massive beasts to sleep. And so it's sort of hard to find the appropriate what's mature, what isn't. Is Grogu capable of doing, multidimensional thinking? Is that
Hmm.
possible? I don't know. I mean, he's a fictional puppet.
That's a
But
fair
in the
point.
world of this story, in this context, Apparently Luke thought it, or maybe Luke is actually a flawed teacher. I like the idea that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at teaching it.
Yeah,
And just because you're good
exactly.
at teaching it doesn't mean you're good at doing it. Luke, from what I saw, seemed to be a very good teacher because he was very patient and very understanding and had different ways to explain things. And that's what you need to do as an educator. So the fact that he showed up, I mean, I think with our hearts, I think our brains tell us, at least my brain tells me, it'd be so cool to see Grogu holding Yoda's lightsaber. I mean, are you
Mhm.
kidding me? What a dream. But your heart goes to the connection of the father son dynamic. And I really want, and I'm still holding out hope that Grogu can be the hybrid. I can be a Mandalorian and I can be a Jedi, right? Just like the Jedi Knight who created the
Hmm.
dark saber himself,
Mm,
Tar Vizsla. That's what
absolutely.
I was hoping for. I was hoping for Grogu to be like, you know what? I want both. I want both.
Mhm.
And Luke sort of realizing attachment may be an antiquated notion. We didn't see the actual manifestation of that choice. We didn't see Luke's reaction to it. But I like that they ended this show, chapter 6, in a cliffhanger like that because
Yeah.
it talk about, like, as you mentioned before, the water cooler concept, that definitely was prevalent there.
Absolutely, it's been driving the conversations for the last week and then some.
Mhm,
It just you you brought to a new light in my mind that I've never thought of to this moment, Dan. The relationship between Din and Grogu is a healthy father-son relationship. That is so
mhm.
brilliantly and eloquently stated,
Thank
and
you.
it's something so needed for Star Wars.
Yes.
And why wouldn't he choose that path? Now that we've had time to digest and reflect on it, there is clearly trauma in Grogu's mind, even just from the
Mhm,
helping get his memories back sequence. And why would he stick to that when he had protection from Din Djarin? He saw defense in the armor. He had someone that cared for him when it seemed like no one had cared for him for maybe the last 25, 30 years. Who knows how long he's and what his life has been like, and he's repressed those memories. I think it's a no-brainer at this point that he would
yes.
decide to go back with him, and just that
Same.
elation on his face when he saw him. Oh, it was
Magic.
incredible,
It was
incredible.
absolute gold. It was
So
absolute gold.
so heartwarming, and just I want to say I think the word that really was like the top of my mind when I saw the interaction was genuine. Right, that was a very
Mhm.
genuine interaction between a kid that hadn't seen his dad in a long time.
I agree. I
Very,
agree.
very
I loved
heartwarming and
it.
affirming.
I loved
Great
it.
stuff. So, and even at larger here, family is so central to Star Wars overall, Dan. And in your
Mhm.
opinion, how was that reflected in the Book of Boba Fett at large, and even within this episode?
I mean, and besides Grogu and Din Djarin, that's the strongest example. There's a found family dynamic as the camera is panning away and you see, Chrysanthemum eating a Mailerune and then the street gang, the mod street gang, saying, "Hey, can you share that with me?" And Chrysanthemum's, barking. Boba Fett's there with Fennec Shan, and he's assembled this cast together, and he's clearly looking for his own tribe. Which to me, a tribe is different
Hmm.
than a family. Oh, there's still the same kind of idea of protection and nurturing
Yeah.
and fending together for survival. So I think there is some of that there. I think that Boba Fett is still very much looking for that, and I wonder if we'll ever get a chance to see him again, or we'll revisit the notion of what it's going to mean for him. But he's clearly trying to create a similar dynamic in this. But I think I maintain that when we saw flashbacks in the first couple episodes of Daniel Logan as Boba Fett watching his father fly away in Boba Fett's starship, I feel like that's him reflecting on not necessarily maybe being alone, but more the idea of missing his dad, missing his family. And
Hmm.
I think Boba Fett is a person who he wants to find a family, and the fact that he establishes one with the Tuscans, although it's very short lived. We're not sure exactly timeline wise how long he was with the Tuscans, but I think that was something that stuck with him and is something that I think is very important to him. And I think that makes him more interesting and certainly more someone that I can relate to as opposed to a really cool looking guy who only has 6 lines of dialogue in 2 movies.
6 lines of dialogue and gets pushed into the Sarlacc pit.
Yes, that's right.
Um, I just find the fascinating of the concept of found family in Star Wars so fascinating. It's there, and the seeds of it are there in A New Hope, and it lasts all the way through Return of the Jedi. Of course,
Hmm.
it's in the prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, every animated show that's been in the Star Wars canon, and in the Book of Boba Fett. I think the trend really does continue in many ways. You mentioned the Tuscans; they are almost the driving force of him realizing that there is strength in numbers, and not
Hmm.
necessarily just strength in numbers, but when you're all building towards a common goal. And that's what I think what a family does in many ways. You're all uplifting each other, you're all supporting each other. It doesn't matter how many of you there are. You can have a family of two, you can have a family of three, you can have a family of
Hmm.
9 or 10. But as long
Yeah.
as you're both there, and all the people in the mix are supporting each other in a mutual respect and for mutual gain of each other,
Hmm.
highlighting each other's best abilities, leaning on each other when you need them, asking for help when needed. All those elements are in this family that Boba found over the course of this series, right? He had Fennec to begin
Absolutely.
with, and we saw how he recruited her for his mission just through kind of explaining his end goal through this process. He eventually, through his kind deeds, saved Kersantin and respected him, even though he tried to kill him. And he could have
Right.
easily lashed out back at him and ended him or whatever, or kept him as a slave or what have you, kept him in the dungeon. He decides to let him go. He says, "Be
Yep.
free." Right? Din Djarin, we talked already about his honor and respect that he gave to him and helping to getting Grogu in season 2 of The Mandalorian. That's why he does this pro bono work for him, and he's why he's going to fight to the end with him there.
Yes.
So just adding, and then the mod group, of course, can't forget them. Uh, that whole notion of helping them out, seeing that they had assets that were helpful to his cause, and he could help them out by not having to pay these exuberant wages or work tremendous hours and for just for water, right? Helping everybody out in the end is what I would consider a family to be. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, I think Boba was putting together a family. I mean, they reference it a lot. They keep saying, the this family and this family, and I'm trying to build a family here. Um, so it's one of the more endearing and enduring things I'm going to think about as the series stays in my mind over the coming weeks.
Right. I agree. I absolutely agree.
So Dan, we've gotten to now in my questions, probably the question that every English paper has ever asked me to contemplate for every book that I've ever had to read in school. But what do you think the overall theme of this episode is?
I mean, I think the theme of the episode is the strength is in the restraint.
Hmm.
Right. I think the early on when there are 2 times when Boba Fett faces off against Cad Bane and Cad Bane pushes all the right buttons and tries to push him over the edge because when you're angry you don't think as clearly and he wants to have something psychologically over Boba Fett because then he will be able to have an advantage over him.
Yeah.
And it does seem to start to work. And Fennec Shan talks about that legend says, basically don't do this, don't give in. And so Boba Fett stops. He puts down his blaster. He stops. And then Cad Bane says, basically, and I don't have the exact line in front of me, but in essence, Cad Bane says, you got to think about just yourself, otherwise you're weak.
Yeah.
Boba Fett defeats Cad Bane after he says that because Boba Fett is not thinking just about himself. He's thinking about the town. He's thinking about
Mm.
the people. He's thinking about his new friends. He's thinking selflessly. He's not thinking selfishly to try to save his own skin.
Yeah.
He's thinking of others. Cad Bane doesn't do that. Cad Bane loses. When you are selfless and you put other people before yourself, you are more successful in your life, in your career, in your occupation, and in your enjoyment of life. And I think that is a very, very powerful theme combined with the notion of you're actually stronger when you show restraint. I've heard people
Hmm.
saying that they feel like Boba Fett was watered down or whatever adjective you want to use to describe him. I don't see that. I mean, yes, what I'd like to see more ferocious fighting things like we saw in the tragedy and in the Mandalorian. Yes, of course I would. But he showed it when he needed to. He's not a ticking
Hmm.
time bomb anymore. He's not a loose cannon. He's got a lot of control and restraint. And I like that. I think that's kind of refreshing. And I think it gives him a little more flavor than I think
Yeah.
he initially had.
100% agree. And I'm going to yes and that a bit more.
Good.
So, in my theory, and what I would also say is kind of the overall thesis statement for maybe this episode, is the ability to change. And that's the concept that comes to my mind when I think of especially that fight at the end with Cad Bane. In the first instance where they interact with each other, if it weren't for Fennec Shan there, I fully believe that Boba would have reverted back to his old ways because Cad knew all the buttons to push there, and he was
Mhm.
pushing them hard, and
Yes.
Boba was ready to turn that switch on to forget everything that he's learned over the last couple of years and go right back to that guy that fell into the Sarlacc pit. But
It's true.
then we get that final showdown at the end of the episode, and Cad Bane is going back to his old bag of tricks. This is the bag of tricks he's done for the last 40 plus years, probably at this point of his career. He knows that he's quick on the draw, and he's quicker on the draw than anybody in the galaxy. And that's what got him to this point thus far. But if that's your only bag of tricks, eventually there's going to be someone that's going to usurp you, be better than you. One way or another, you're going to have to figure out how to change, right? Dan, you're a sports guy. What is a pitcher that throws 99 for the first 5 years of their career? What typically happens to them after those 5 years and then going on to the next 5, 10 years of their career?
Right. If you don't learn to pitch with control and not rely on speed, you're going to be out of the game pretty quick.
Exactly. Your arm's going to burn out. You're going to lose velocity on that fastball. You're going to be throwing 89 by the time you're in your sixth or seventh year. You're going to be coming out of the bullpen at that point, and then by that point, you're going to be back down in the minors, unless you develop a second pitch, a curveball, a cutter,
That's right.
a changeup, something that's going to
Hmm.
keep you at a high level and high intensity in order to stay at the top.
It's
And to
true.
me, Boba having the gaffy stick there and using that to defeat Cad Bane is the ultimate way of showing that change is how you adapt. Change is how you become a better I mean, not necessarily saying that the fight between them and all that stuff, but if you don't adapt to change, you're never going to become a better person overall. You're not going to become a well-rounded person overall.
Hmm.
And in
There's a
this
certain
sequence,
symmetry to that.
absolutely, absolutely. And then that's how he's able to defeat them, is because that's something that Cad Bane never expected, and it's something that he was never prepared for. And he was, I guess, he in his hubris, he knew that he could just be quick on the draw, and it's worked for him 1,000 times up to this point. And why would it be any
Yeah,
different this time? I could find that hole in the best car, take him out, and that'll be the end of this here.
true.
And that is the ultimate lesson at the end of the day here, is that you have to be able to adapt, learn, and change. And the fact that he has that quip with him, he's like, what's your end game here? And then he can't even empathize with them that maybe there is another path here. Maybe there is another way to be a rule. Maybe we can lead ourselves. Maybe we don't have to just take orders from people that don't even care if we live or die at the end of the day. We're just a paycheck, or we're just someone that gets paid at the end of the day. And to
Right.
Cad Bane, that's been his life to this point, and he's never questioned that or changed that. It doesn't look like he's ever attempted to break the mold at all when it comes to this. So to me, that's the very telling thing here, and it's very almost reminiscent to that scene in Solo where they have that similar
Hmm.
showdown shoot off at the end between Tobias Beckett and Han Solo, where Han learns that ultimate lesson of sometimes you have to shoot first if you're going to be a survivor at the end of the day.
That's right.
So that's really the I would say that fight between Cad Bane and Boba Fett at the end of this episode is the ultimate icing on the cake thesis statement for this entire series.
I agree. There's like three or four things in there that are worth breaking down a lot more thoroughly, like we just did.
Absolutely. Gosh, I love this conversation. Uh, So, Dan, we've gotten to my final question here. And as a mythology guy, I think you're going to love it.
Okay.
But what do you think this series did for the growth of the Star Wars mythology surrounding Boba Fett?
I think it made it a little convoluted
Mm-hmm.
because now we have a very different character than we thought we were going to get. And it really depends on where they. I mean, if this is, I don't feel like this is the end of Fett's story.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it is. I've never really been someone who's been interested in the underworld aspects of Star Wars. Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
was started, with hope, with optimism, with a belief in the energy field created by all living things called the Force and lightsabers and found family. And only the found family part is really part of this story. So it's very unique. It's a unique take on Star Wars, a very different take on Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars. But I think we have learned that Boba Fett has more to offer than just being looking great in armor and being a very determined and a deadly bounty hunter. I think that
Yeah.
the fact that, as you said, he can change, he can find sort of redemption and a new path for his life. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to rewrite your course and start the ship in a different direction because you can actually start to contribute and find joy and empowerment in your decisions and lift people up. Find that notion that, together we are stronger. And I think from that aspect, I think it's great. I hope people like it. I try to ignore mixed reviews. In fact, I even muted the word Boba Fett on Twitter because I find that to be a little bit
Very
more
smart. Very smart on your end.
easy to ingest. You know what I mean? But I hope that people start to appreciate him more. That he's not just a cool looking character. He's got some more things that he's trying to figure out. And I like that he's still trying to figure things out. No
Yeah.
one, even adults who are very successful, you don't always have everything figured out. And if you think you do, there's a great saying I have. Olin Kreutz, the former Bears center, always says it. If you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I think that is
Mm.
what Boba Fett is learning.
Wow. That's a great quote. I'm gonna have to
I
use
love it,
that almost every day from now on. That's
honestly.
You have to keep pushing your boundaries, otherwise, and testing your limits. Otherwise, you're never going to know what you can achieve. And again, it
Exactly.
makes you a more well-rounded person and individual.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
you hit that absolutely on the nail there, Dan. Boba Fett is more than a helmet, more than a guy that is just an action figure, more than a cool
Hmm.
looking character in the galaxy. We got bits and pieces of that in the Clone Wars animated series and in Attack of the Clones, of course. And I'm glad that we got Daniel Logan in the series in some way, shape, or form, even for a little bit there. And just to know that that is still weighing on his mind, and that family still seems to be a lingering aspect of Boba that I didn't think might have been there, at least presented to me as the character that I know in the original trilogy. Um, so just and of course having more time with him by nature of that, we were going to find out more about this character in one way, shape, or form. He wasn't just going to be the guy that got 5 minutes of screen time anymore. He's now got maybe 4 or 5 hours of screen time at this point. Just by
Yeah.
that nature, we're gonna get a lot more. I like that we got his kind of ideas on how to be a ruler and what it means to be a ruler and what he values in the people surrounding him. I think those would be endearing things that we can study moving forward as a fandom. But I also love that point that you made there at the end. That is very reminiscent of the real world, and it came in with the notion that Grogu also decided too, because he tested the waters of being a Jedi again, and he said, it's not for me." And I think
Hmm.
we should normalize that as a society a bit more. If you why why succumb yourself to 40 years of doing something if you don't like doing it? If you're not
Right.
enjoying something or if you're not good at it, right? Don't keep trying. Right, if go find something else that you like to do. If you find that you completed your task and you're a ruler and it's not your thing, that's okay. Go There's a million other things in the world that you can do. Go start a podcast, right? Go do something that is going to be outside your comfort zone a little bit. Go expand. I mean, Boba probably never would have thought that he would have learned how to fight with a gaffy stick before, but that's
Right.
something
Or
he
that he
tried
would
to
even
do.
need to or want to.
Exactly. Exactly, and he tried it, and it didn't work out so well to begin, but he stuck with it because he seemed to appreciate the culture of the Tuscans and being a part of this community, and he stuck with it, right? So it's like, again, it's we should normalize in a society that if you're not if you don't want to do something, it's okay, right? It's no harm. You tried, you did your best, and it's okay to move on to something else. And
Hmm.
let others that give them the opportunity if they want to succeed in that role that you left behind them. Because I think Boba, in the end, achieved the task they set out for. He all those inept rulers, the crime lords, the families that were harassing the people of those towns in Tatooine are gone out of the picture. At least for now. They might come back in one way, shape, or form down the line. Who knows? But as far as the end of this episode, they're not in the picture anymore, and those people are happy. They're free to set their own path before them, and if that was Boba's end goal, he's done his task, and he can
He did it.
let someone else take over. Maybe they heavily alluded to Cobb Vanth in the post-credit scene, maybe being someone that could fill those shoes. And Boba's free to try something else, go do something else in the world. Maybe find out what it means to about his lineage, his heritage. Maybe be more follow the way. Maybe go hunt down Din Djarin and be a part of his crew. Who knows? The sky's the limit for Boba's future, and that's very exciting to me.
I agree. I agree. I hope we see all of these characters in all these Disney Plus series. I hope they constantly intermingle because I think that that's a lot of fun. I think we sort of in. I joked earlier. I think we're in kind of a WWE society where we like to see the surprise run onto the ring and just kind of electrify the crowd.
That's a great way to put it. I will also just reference your wonderful Twitter thread from a few weeks ago about
Mm.
having all these characters in the Star Wars universe and this great soup that we get to have of all this. And I hope that they keep going back to that well, creating new characters that are just as equal and important to the galaxy and just as impactful, but continue to bring in Pelimoto and the Major Domo
Yes,
and the Mod Gang and all these Chrysanthemum, right? Let's continue to cultivate these stories and just see where these characters go in the future.
I love it. I love it. And speaking of the mayor's major domo pretty much steals the show. This is the last episode. He's great. He was so charismatic, hilarious.
He did. I joked with my wife that the Major Domo went to the Larry David School on Coruscant to learn his.
Must be why I liked him so much.
I loved it. I loved it. Just his interactions as uh, in his diplomacy, which chef's kiss, brilliant. Loved it.
Agreed.
Whoever created the idea behind this character, whether it be Favreau, Filoni, hats off to you. That was great.
Definitely.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show and for geeking out about the finale, the season finale for the Book of Boba Fett. Before we sign off here today, go ahead and plug Coffee with Kenobi. Where can our listeners find you on the internet? Tell them where they can find you.
Certainly, well, you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. And if you want to listen to Coffee with Kenobi, is wherever podcasts you get podcasts on your podcast feeds. We're all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok. We have our YouTube channel that you can certainly subscribe to every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, which I know you've joined us many times, Anthony, is
Absolutely.
CWK Live. You can share your top fives of the most recent Star Wars series or movie or whatever topic is for the week. I always let you know the week before so you can get your top five ready. A little bit of Star Wars homework, but that's always a fun thing. Then the regular Coffee with Kenobi comes out on Thursdays. You can order the Star Wars book or the Star Wars Character Encyclopedia Updated and Expanded Edition on Amazon.com, which I was fortunate enough to be a co-author on. You can find my writings on StarWars.com. And if you have a podcast or a blog or want to start one, you can certainly reach out to me at danzmedia.com and I can help you get that process started.
Absolutely. Reach out to Dan if you're looking to start a podcast. I can attest to you, it has been one of the greatest things that I've ever done. So thank you to Dan
That's
for
very
coming on
kind.
the show. I hope to see all of our listeners on CWK Live. I am usually there every Monday along with the other members of the wonderful CWK community. Come be a part of that too. There's enough room around the table for coffee with Coffee with Kenobi and to sit around the
That's
Force
right.
Ghost Conversations campfire. Let's build a wonderful Star Wars community and let's celebrate all the things in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, Anthony, thank you so much again. I'm such a big fan of you and your work and your passion, and I love your real and you're exactly what the Star Wars community needs. And thank you so much for being you.
Oh, that is truly, truly an honor to hear that, Tan. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. You have an open invitation every time, every week. And to the listeners at home, we'll be back next time, next week, with a new episode, and may the force be with you.